Hello, you guys. It is so good to see you. It takes me back 20 years at least, maybe more. Let's see, it would have been 2000, so 22 years that I was looking at you out in the Covenant Epistemology class
Oh
and
my
seeing
goodness.
you sitting back there. Yeah,
We
so
were
everybody, I want to introduce Michael Gordon and Jon Dunning, who are so dear to me and part of the Longing to Know story early on. And they also are really, really good friends with each other of many years, which I noticed early on when I first saw you. So this is so great. Thank you.
It's really fun
thank
to be
you.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is awesome, Esther. This is awesome.
Well, I appreciate that you're helping me do this. And our agenda is to have a little conversation that celebrates Longing to Know turns 20, which is in 2023. And uh, you guys are key players from those very early days. And so I have basically two questions for you to respond to. One is generally tell your story of your involvement with this book. And then love to have your sense of its value 20 years on down the road. And then everybody, if you don't realize it already, I tell Michael's story in Longing to Know. So he's got a better part of two chapters that talk about Michael. So this is the Michael of Longing to Know. And then I thank both of these guys in the opening part because I remember how very specifically you both encouraged me when I was writing the book. So who wants to start and just share what your story is about your involvement in Longing to Know? I prepare to be surprised as you remind me things.
John, why don't you go?
Okay. So I'm just going to start telling the story because I was thinking about this a lot today, Esther, as I was getting ready for this. I think my involvement was that I thought I had intellectual questions that I needed answers to. And I knew that Michael did. And I knew that he was smarter than me. And so I thought, I'll go hang out with this guy. And he's like, I mean, it was Michael's idea, like, to pursue you, I think, Esther. If I remember correctly, there was a summer that we were both in town. And just like, we should meet with Esther. We should hang out with her is basically kind of what I remember how it started. The
Wow,
reality,
I didn't know this.
the interesting piece in it for me is I thought I had intellectual questions, but I had definite vocational questions that I didn't know that I had. And this has been very formative in that for me, the idea of knowing what I was supposed to do with my life. And you straightened me out a ton, Esther, on this. And I think the book is part of that in terms of the ideas. And so for me, it was, I didn't understand calling, and I didn't know how I was supposed to figure out what calling was supposed to be for me. And I was expecting, I didn't know it at the time, but I was expecting to have like writing on the wall, a voice from heaven, and all of this stuff. And none of that was how it worked. And so there's the follow up to that will come later when I answer the second question. But so my part of it was being in a place where I had questions I didn't know that I had, and the content of what you wrote and really lived, which is really the funnest part of this in my mind, Esther, was realizing, when you do the auto mechanic stuff in the book, you're not just trying to explain to us a concept and use this illustration to explain this concept. You're actually trying to explain reality and how it works. And so it's natural for you, I think, to like, it's just a natural part of your life to like live this way. Like the stories with the bird. I don't remember was it Bandit? Was it the bird?
Yes,
And
that's in Loving to Know.
oh, sorry. Yeah. But
You might have remembered Bandit, though. I can't remember whether you were around
well,
then.
yeah, I was, yeah. But so I remember all these things, and it wasn't like you had these high concepts you were trying to dwindle down and get us to understand. You're just trying to explain reality and how life works. And so I think, and that was really huge for me. And is a big part of my life now as I work with college students in that part of their life. But that's the first question in terms of kind of where I was. I was newly married, I think. I think it was right after we got married. Michael, you were in Ghana for that semester, I think, and then you came back, I think, or something like that. I'm not fully sure on the timing of everything. Sorry, I can't remember all the details, but I remember
That's right. And
that.
I'm going to
And
interrupt you to say, John, can you
sure.
slide a little bit to
Oh,
your
sorry.
left? There you go.
Sorry.
There, that's better. That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, but yeah, I just remember those, like, time together, going out to dinner, but also like just like you had us in your home, and that was just what you did. Like, I remember, we helped you with yard work, we did whatever just to hang
Ah,
out. And so it fits that, like, again, you weren't trying to explain stuff to us, you're just kind of walking into reality with us and inviting us to see it through your eyes, is
so
kind of
neat.
what I would say.
That's neat. So Longing to Know looked kind of like an extension of whatever it was I was trying to walk. Yeah.
Very much, very much.
And then
mean,
you were getting connected to Michael at that point too. So Michael,
yeah.
what's your story?
Well, I mean, you tell a chunk of it in the
Yeah.
book. So John and I
I
have been
do
friends.
that to no other student, by the way.
Well, John and I have been friends our first couple years of seminary, and then I had kind of a faith crisis and had dropped out and gone to work on the farm in Wales, and had come back, and I knew that I had lots of kind of epistemological questions, and so I was uncertain of what next steps were. But I think I don't remember how I learned, either from a course catalog or somebody telling me, was probably more likely back then, that you were planning to teach the epistemology course, which I hadn't met you yet, but I knew Mike Williams and had really loved his teaching, and you guys were co-teaching that first iteration of it. And so I came back to seminary just to take the epistemology course. And then it was very much like that old, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. It felt like the questions I needed to ask and wrestle through were the questions you wanted to talk about. And I, in retrospect, not every class was like this, but that first class too, because I ended up taking a bunch of classes with you, but that first class, like, was a pretty special group. I feel like, I just think about where a lot of those people are today, and there were some pretty bright and engaging people in that class that were fun to wrestle with ideas with. But then I think you were kind of finding your voice after entering back into the academy after a time away. And so we kept trying to encourage you. These are really important things that we need to talk more about. And then so my memory is you started writing chapters and would feed them to John and I, and we would get together and answer all of our questions.
Yeah.
And
so
you would do what? I'm sorry, you would get together and
you would give us a chapter, we would read it and say, well, what about this? And how about this? And what about this? And so it felt like, at least, that we were kind of a part of the process of you birthing the book.
I forgot that. That's so cool. Thank you. That's so neat.
Yeah.
So I think that happened after the class, but it was kind of like, an ongoing kind of time of.
That's right. I
trying to.
remember you being involved over a summer. I can't remember which summer. And I all I know is, like, within a month after the class was over, I was talking to a publisher. How that happened, I can hardly piece together. But I wouldn't have been. I feel like it was maybe the next summer that I wrote the book. So anyway, you guys were around somehow, and maybe one of you at least was working on campus. I don't know, but
We both ended up working together on campus, and so.
So you were okay.
Well, and then we both took logic with you after that, right? Didn't we?
Yes, we did.
And then I don't remember if you took the history of philosophy, like we took that too, and so it was a couple-year journey of.
What's that?
I said it was a couple-year journey of talking a whole lot and thinking together, and so.
Yeah. Oh man, that's very cool. Well, fast forward to now. Can you hardly believe it? I mean, it's we all have a problem with COVID having, erased our memories, or the continuity of our memories. But here we are. Can you believe it? 20 years since the book came out in in 2003. So what are your what's your perspective on the book now, its viability after being 20 years old? Also, tell people what your job is and what your expertise is that positions you as you respond to this. And you know what, Michael, you also, if you can say a little bit more about where you are with regard to your spirituality and epistemology now, I mean, is there another chapter to your story? I know you have only 2 minutes left, but who's counting?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm still living out the implications of longing to know. I feel like categories that got redefined for me, a shift from a quest for a tyrannical quest for certainty into a freeing comfortableness with confidence, like is still very much the place that I live from. Like a paradigm that gave me, well, both a framework that said there's the fiduciary nature to knowledge, that all knowledge is faith-based, all knowledge involves submission to some authority, and a valid criteria for the internal testimony of the Holy Spirit as a part of that authoritative testimony, like, is still the framework that I move into the world from. So, I've been in ministry, ordained Christian ministry, for a long time. I've seen a lot of people walk away from the faith, and certainly understand some of those challenges, but I really feel like part of what God's used to sustain my faith, it's not like I've stopped wrestling with big questions or haven't lived through other seasons of kind of doubt, but I feel like the epistemological questions have been largely satisfied through the framework of longing to know in a way that has been deeply helpful and comforting. So yeah, so I'd say that's just as true 23 years later. I would say, like, in terms of the lingering impact of the book, like, thinking about this in preparation for this call, like, in some ways, I feel like it's probably even more timely now than it was 20 years ago. Like, the epistemological shift, both John and I work for a ministry that works with college students. I used to be on campus and in kind of an administrative role now, but the questions that students are wrestling with, the drift epistemologically, culturally, it is only become more pronounced. And so where I feel like maybe for me, the issue I needed help with was freedom from the tyranny of certainty. I really feel like it's the other side of the paradigm that's super helpful now, which is contact with reality, where college students' epistemology is so hyper experiential. Like, what is true is so much my experience in a way that is not translatable towards a reality that crosses over person to person. And so I think the notion of there being a reality that we actually come into contact with from an apologetic perspective, infinitely significant and relevant for the questions that people live from 20 years after the book was written. So.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I mean, Michael said it better than I could, and all that stuff. I would add to it, I think, and some of this is my context. I'm in the Midwest, and my context is students are largely risk averse, and I think this model of knowing, like, you have to deal with risk. Like, I say it all the time. Like, I'm just trying to be honest with them. Like, there's risk in this. I think of the laying out of the Frisbee image, the image for sure. But I think our students, and this is very much intertwined with my story, as I was saying earlier. The way I tell students is they're trying to find answers to questions without asking the questions first. And so they want to know the answers ahead of time, which is sort of like this weird intuition thing. It is experiential, like Michael's saying. I think there's part of it, though, that's like they should just know and just do it. And so I have a lot of conversations with students about just helping them stop and, like, ask questions about the world they live in, and about what their desires are. I mean, it goes back to you asking me, what do you want, John?
Oh,
And I
did I
tell students,
ask you that?
yeah, well, what like for that even to be a legitimate category for me
Yeah,
was
right.
strange.
Yeah.
But I ask students all the time, like, what do you want to do? And they just kind of stare blankly at me. But yeah, so I think it's very, very appropriate in that same sense of I think it's the questions are still there because we probably going to speak over my head here. Yeah, I think we wrestle with and I see young people wrestling even with what is my experience and what's real and
Mhm.
what's not and what's worth hanging on to and what's not. So I think that's all wrapped up in the conversation for students to this day for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool, as you both uh, tell a little bit more of your story. I think I'd forgotten, John, that what you were wrestling with was calling, personal calling, but it's the same question as the larger question, and it's like Michael's questions are going this way and John's are going this way, and
Yes.
you've got this
Yeah.
nice kind of intersection in
Yeah.
epistemology.
Yeah.
So I love you guys, you knew that. And I'm thinking that the last time maybe that the three of us were together was Michael's wedding. And I have this gorgeous picture of the three of us the night before, which was New Year's Eve, right? And we were on some balcony having a party and watching the fireworks. And then the next day, Michael, you married
That's
Chris,
awesome.
and
Awesome.
we were all there together. I don't know if we've been together since, but you are near and dear to me, and I just love seeing you right now. And if I don't shut up soon, I'm going to start crying. So, parting shots from anybody other than for me to say thank you so much for being part of my little video interview.
Well, I think we'd be,
Esther.
yeah, without saying thank you right back at you. Like, it was actually really helpful and encouraging to slow down and go back and, revisit my story some.
Yeah.
And in that is to say, man, God really was kind to put you in my path when he did. And
Amen.
like I've said it before, it's not hyperbolic to say like it was a faith-saving interaction. Like, yeah. So I'm deeply thankful to God and to you for that season of life that we had.
And me too. Praise me. I don't know why I'm getting feedback. I'm sorry about that. But Michael, John.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say I would say the same Esther. And I will start crying if I keep talking. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I love you. Thank you.
Love you too, Esther.